Hello everybody, this is Thrills and Gills right back at you on the high tide once again. Today I'm going to be talking about land crabs in general, not a specific care guide today. We will be getting back to that with these little guys pretty soon, but I'd like to answer some of your guys' questions because there is a lot of things that I've learned and that I did not mention in other videos that I think should be caught up with. And there's a couple comments that have been made that I think should be answered. So I'm going to go through all that today. So the first thing, and this is what actually changed my mind to actually make this video, was not too long ago, somebody commented on our video about Gravedigger asking about sediment boundaries. So when it comes to sediment measurements, I personally think that when it comes to sand or peat, which one you should have more of, you should definitely have more sand over peat because they tend to plow it more than they plow anything else, and ours definitely can tear through peat, and it seems that peat even. One of the biggest things I've learned about these crabs is you need to have a very moist substrate, because the way a lot of these crabs get their moisture is through a process called pad sterilization. So they will take in, water and whatnot, and then later they release it onto the bottom part of their carapace to basically clean themselves. So when it comes to this, you have to realize that the crab can store a lot of water, and usually they don't really care for a super moist substrate, and this is where I also have an issue with peat, especially with these crabs being frugivorous. I personally think sand is a better option for a couple reasons. First off, sand is a lot more easy for them to plow. They seem to have a much easier time digging it. I mean, these guys can also dig in peat and whatnot. I mean, that's what they have here. They're digging through soil and peat with no problem. But when you have a crab that's plowing up to a pound's worth of sand in like 20 minutes, it's personally better for them to have sand. It's a lot less strenuous for them to plow it, and it also doesn't retain as much water. And this is a good thing for a couple of reasons. The biggest reason is since these crabs eat majority of the time they eat fruit, they can eat, carrion and other stuff, but I prefer to feed them pretty much fruit. It is super good to keep moisture levels somewhat low if you're planning on keeping their food anywhere in their habitat, because these crabs in the wild have caches, and they will take their food and they will put it in a burrow. So they will cache their food, and this is really, really bad if you have moist substrate, because if you know anything about fruit and moisture and humid environments, it's gonna get messy and it's gonna get really moldy. And that's really bad because a lot of these crabs have not a great rep with a lot of fungus. So making sure that their food does not become fungus food is crucial to this, and this is where the substrate comes in. Peat holds way more water, and if they're digging a cache in your peat and then they're storing food in there, and unless you want to try to get in front of them and try to take their food away, you might want to get sand, because sand has a better time drying food out, which allows it to be less likely to have mold and whatnot to make your crabs sick. Now there are other ways around this. You could feed them what I feed them sometimes, like dried fruits for parrots and stuff. They seem to be able to eat this just fine. These guys eat dried papaya specifically, and a couple other things, dried banana chips and whatnot. And I do this with parrot food. Do not go out to the grocery store and just buy dried banana chips. They are covered in sugar. They will kill your crab. But ones for parrots are okay. They're made for animals like this. But when it comes to the whole substrate thing, personally, I think, yes, it's good to have some peat, but I definitely think you should have much more sand per peat, because your crab is also going to probably dig it up at some point, because that's just kind of what they're good at. They're good at destroying the environment, at least your captivity environment. So, for those who are asking about how I do my sediment, I personally think that if you're going to use peat, that's fine, but use more sand than peat, because sand is going to dry out quicker, which means that the food you put in there is going to not get as moldy as fast. And, it's always good to replace the food too, but it's kind of hard to tell if they have food or not if they bury it constantly. And trust me, Gravedigger buries his food constantly. He earns his name in being Gravedigger because he digs graves for his food. So when it comes to that sort of, care, yes, good to have peat, but if you want to, because these crabs still need moisture, and they need quite a bit of moisture too. As I said, they're still crabs, and even though they live on land, they still need a lot of humidity because they still have gills in there. So they still need to use those gills to not die. And that's also why this habitat also has clay balls at the bottom. It's good for holding moisture at the very bottom. That might also be a good thing for smaller crabs, not bigger crabs. Bigger crabs seem to be the biggest issue. They tend to have a huge problem with anything that seems semi-edible. They are the type of crab that will try to eat anything if they can get their little, or in this case, big claws on it. So if you're planning on, making a habitat, personally, what I do, and this is just my strategy, and this seems to work really well. If you get one of those big, like ceramic boa logs, I'm sure you've seen it in the tank that we have, but it's like this big ceramic, it's like a big ceramic log that has like a couple holes in it. Bury one of those in the sand, or like keep it a little bit up so he can like dig inside of it, and put the peat underneath that, but still have like a layer of sand over it first. You want the peat to be pretty much hard to access. They're still going to access it, and they're still going to drudge it up eventually, but you want it so they can't bury crap in it. That's the big deal. If they bury stuff in it, you're screwed. Like, even in this tank, I find their burrows, and they have tons of food stuffed in there. When I had Halloween crabs, when I used to live in Pennsylvania, they did the same thing. They'll take all of their food and they'll stuff it in their burrows. It's really annoying, but it's something you have to put up with. And concerning some other things about land crabs, wires you need to be so careful with wires. And I might have mentioned it in one of my videos. I think I might have mentioned it in the Jamaican land crab video, but these guys can cut wires. Do not keep wires near them. They will cut them because, I don't know, funny. I have no idea why they cut them. It might be because they see it as vegetation, but they don't cut the pothos in here. I don't understand why. So please be careful with wires with these guys. They will cut them, they will break your stuff. It is as annoying as it sounds. And here's another thing that I should bring up. So, yes, I'm gonna make this very clear. Yes, I have a video of me walking this crab. I would like to mention that if you plan on trying to do this with a Jamaican land crab, please note that you have to build trust with this thing. I did not do this like day 3. I did it like a couple weeks into owning this thing. These guys are strong, and if they clip you, it's gonna hurt. So please do not just attempt to put a crab in a leash unless you want to lose your fingers, especially with a crab of that size. I might add that they have a grip force strong enough to break your bones. Now, concerning other land crabs, another reason you want to keep some peat as well, and this is also important, is for molting purposes. So when any of these crabs molt, they do bury themselves. So, and I think I did not mention it in the Jamaican land crab video, but I did mention it way back in my moon crab video. Do not freak out if they are buried in the sand. But if you have multiple crabs, it's probably best to try to keep them away from the one that's molting. They do take advantage of one another. Now, obviously, if you have one solitary crab, that's not a problem. But if you see him just sitting in the sand and just resting, but still occasionally moving his eyes, he's not dying, he's getting ready to molt. If it's buried in the sand, at least. If it's just sitting somewhere, you might want to check on that. But if it's buried, it's going to start molting, and don't bother your crab while it's trying to molt. It's in a very vulnerable spot. You could very easily damage it. So keep that in mind. Let's see. Is there anything else I need to go over in this whole video? Oh yeah, I guess vegetation is kind of a thing now because I have these guys. So if you plan to put vegetation in their tanks, please make sure you do not put poisonous vegetation with them. Now, what classifies as poisonous versus a crab as compared to like your dog or cat is a lot different because crabs have a pretty good digestion system, but put things, basically regular terrarium plants that are, in my eyes, if you can put it in with an iguana, you can put it in with a crab. Because if you're going to put it in with one of these crabs, realize that it's going to start cutting it. They do cut plants. They will destroy plants if they have the opportunity to. Keep this in mind. So I hope I've wrapped up some of these questions. I am going to start making a couple more videos. We unfortunately had one of our eldest dogs pass away, so I've been kind of on the quiet side of things right now. But we will be getting back to making regular videos pretty soon, and then you'll get to see these guys in action. And yeah, so I hope this video wraps up some of the questions you were wondering. And guys, please, if you have questions about these animals and you're just wondering something, feel free to ask. I'm not the sort of person who's gonna attack you for asking questions. That's what this channel's for. This channel is for helping you guys find out how to take care of these beautiful, wonderful creatures. This has been Thrills and Gills. I will see you on the next low tide. Bye.